What did ancient humans eat that made us human? For most of human history, there were no supermarkets, no refrigerators, no food labels. Every meal had to be found, gathered, hunted, processed, or cooked. And sometimes, one mistake could be fatal. Our ancestors ate foods that would look strange to us today. Wild roots, insects, shellfish, honey, tough meat, bitter plants, animal organs, and in some parts of the world, plants containing natural toxins that had to be carefully processed before they could be eaten safely. Yet somehow, over hundreds of thousands of years, this unpredictable relationship with food helped transform a relatively small ape into one of the most adaptable species the planet has ever seen. So what exactly were our ancestors eating? And more importantly, how did food help make us human? There is one important problem with the popular image of the caveman. There was no single ancient human diet. There was no universal prehistoric menu. Our ancestors lived across an enormous range of environments, and they ate what those environments could provide. In cold regions, animal foods could become extremely important. Near rivers and coastlines, fish and shellfish could provide valuable nutrition. In forests and grasslands, people gathered fruits, nuts, seeds, roots, tubers, honey, and other plant foods. They hunted when they could, they gathered when they could, and when the environment changed, they adapted. Even modern hunter-gatherer societies show just how diverse human diets can be. Some rely heavily on plant foods. Others consume substantial amounts of animal foods. Many eat a mixture that changes with the seasons. So the popular image of prehistoric humans eating nothing but meat is misleading. The ancient world did not have a single diet. It had thousands of menus, and every one of them was shaped by one simple question: what can we eat here? That question sounds ordinary today. For our ancestors, it could determine whether a family survived. There were no nutrition labels, no laboratory tests, no internet search telling them whether a strange plant was safe. There was only observation, experience, memory, and knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Some of that knowledge was remarkably sophisticated. Consider cassava. Today, cassava is a major food crop in many parts of the world, but certain varieties contain compounds that can release cyanide if the plant is eaten improperly. A poisonous plant as food? It sounds like a contradiction, unless you know how to process it. Across different cultures, people developed methods involving steps such as peeling, crushing, soaking, fermenting, drying, boiling, or cooking. The exact process varies depending on the variety and the traditional food being made, but the principle is the same. Take something potentially dangerous and transform it into something useful and safe. That transformation is one of the great stories of human food. Because our ancestors didn't simply find food, they learned how to change it. And then came the invention that may have changed everything: fire. More specifically, cooking. Imagine eating a tough piece of raw meat, or chewing a hard root for hours, or trying to digest a raw, starchy plant. Your body can do it, but it takes work. Cooking changes the physical and chemical properties of many foods. It softens them. It breaks down structures. It can make starches easier to digest, and it can make some nutrients and energy more accessible. Harvard biological anthropologist Richard Wrangham proposed a controversial but influential idea known as the cooking hypothesis. His argument was that cooking may have played a major role in human evolution. The idea is surprisingly simple. Better food processing can provide more usable energy. More usable energy can support expensive organs. And one of the most expensive organs in the human body is the brain. The human brain is remarkably demanding. It consumes a large share of the body's energy even when we are resting. So imagine what happens when our ancestors begin getting more energy from the food already available to them. Suddenly, food isn't just about survival. it may become part of the evolutionary equation. Wrangham's hypothesis connects the rise of cooking with major changes in the human body. Over evolutionary time, humans developed smaller teeth and jaws compared with some of our earlier relatives, along with digestive systems adapted to a high-quality diet. But there is an important detail. Scientists do not agree that cooking alone explains human evolution. The story is almost certainly more complicated. Meat, plant foods, food processing, hunting, climate, social behavior. Many factors may have played a role. Cooking is not a magic explanation for everything, but it may have been one of the most important technologies our ancestors ever developed. And unlike a stone tool, you couldn't simply put it down. Cooking became part of daily life. It changed what food could be. It changed how long people spent chewing. It changed how food could be shared. And it may even have changed the way humans organized themselves around the fire. Because once food could be transformed by fire, the meal became more than fuel. People gathered. They waited. They shared. They watched. They learned. And knowledge could be passed from one generation to the next. That brings us to another extraordinary part of ancient human diets. The real secret may not have been any particular food. It may have been knowledge. Think about it. A poisonous plant can become food if you know how to process it. A tough root can become edible when cooked. Meat can be preserved. Seeds can be ground. Grains can be transformed. Fermentation can change foods in ways that make them last longer or become easier to consume. Humans became unusually good at taking what nature provided and turning it into something more useful. That ability is one of the reasons food became more than a biological necessity. It became technology. But what did all of this do to the human body? Were ancient humans actually stronger than us? The answer is more complicated than the internet usually makes it sound. Ancient humans were not universally stronger than modern humans. A modern athlete can be extraordinarily strong, and ancient populations varied enormously in body size, activity, health, and environment. But many ancient people lived lives that placed tremendous physical demands on their bodies. Walking long distances, carrying water, gathering plants, digging roots, climbing, hunting, processing food, building shelters, moving across difficult landscapes. Their skeletons can preserve evidence of the physical stresses experienced during life. Their teeth can preserve evidence of what they ate and how heavily they used them. Their bodies were adapted to a world where movement was not something you scheduled at the gym. It was part of getting through the day. But there was another side to this world. It was dangerous. Food was not guaranteed. A drought could destroy a food source. A harsh winter could eliminate an entire season's supply. An injury could make hunting or gathering impossible. And infection, starvation, accidents, and childbirth could all become life-threatening. So when we imagine ancient humans as perfectly healthy super athletes, we are missing half the story. Their bodies were adapted to survival, but survival came with a price. And then, humanity made another enormous change. We stopped relying entirely on wild food. We began farming. Agriculture transformed the relationship between humans and food. Instead of following the seasons and moving toward available resources, people could cultivate particular plants and animals. Food became more predictable. Populations could grow. Settlements became larger. Eventually, cities emerged, and civilization accelerated. But there was a trade-off. A diet based heavily on a small number of domesticated crops could be less diverse than the foods available to some hunter-gatherer populations. Human societies responded in different ways. They developed new cooking methods, new crops, new preservation techniques, new combinations of foods, and eventually, food became abundant in ways our ancestors could never have imagined. Today, most of us can walk into a store and find thousands of calories within minutes. We can eat strawberries in winter, fish from another continent, fruit that traveled thousands of miles, food preserved for months, food engineered to taste incredibly good. Our environment has changed faster than evolution can completely redesign the human body. And that creates a fascinating mismatch. The human body evolved in environments where food availability could fluctuate. Today, many people live in environments where high-calorie food is constantly available. That does not mean modern food is automatically bad, and it certainly does not mean we should try to recreate a prehistoric diet. There was no single perfect ancient diet in the first place. Instead, the lesson is much more interesting. Human beings evolved to be extraordinarily flexible eaters. We learned to survive on what the environment offered. We learned to process dangerous plants. We learned to cook. We learned to preserve. We learned to farm. And eventually, we learned to manipulate food on an industrial scale. Every step changed our relationship with what we ate. So perhaps the most important food in human history wasn't meat. It wasn't berries. It wasn't grain. It wasn't even fire. It was the ability to learn. Our ancestors didn't inherit a perfect menu. They inherited a problem. Find something to eat. Figure out what is safe. Remember what works. Teach the next generation. Then adapt when the environment changes. Generation after generation, that knowledge accumulated. And eventually, those accumulated solutions helped build villages, then cities, then civilizations. Food didn't just keep humans alive, it helped shape the humans who survived. So the next time you sit down for a meal, remember what you're actually looking at. A piece of bread represents thousands of years of agriculture. A cooked meal represents generations of experimentation with fire. A fermented food represents knowledge passed through cultures. And even the ability to walk into a supermarket and choose almost anything you want is the result of an extraordinarily long human story. Our ancestors did not become successful because they discovered one magical food. They became successful because they learned how to turn almost any environment into an opportunity. They learned what to eat. They learned how to transform it. They learned how to share it. And they learned how to pass that knowledge forward. We didn't conquer the planet because we were the strongest animal. We didn't have the sharpest claws. We weren't the fastest. We weren't the biggest. We survived because we could learn. We could adapt. And when the world changed, we changed with it. The story of what humans eat is not simply a story about food. It is the story of how an ordinary meal became one of the most powerful forces in human history. And that story is still being written.